All right. Welcome. My name is Sean Thibodeau. I'm the coordinator of community planning at the Pollard Memorial Library in Lowell, Massachusetts. It's my pleasure to welcome tonight author Bob Hodge, um, who is a Lowell native and wrote a book called Tales of the Times, which is sort of um, uh, it's a collection of tales that are arranged roughly chronologically um, across his lifespan and mostly themed around his illustrious running career, which
Mm.
I have to say I was very impressed by. So I'm looking forward to talk to him about this book and running and being an author and doing Zoom events and stuff like that. Um, how you doing, Bob?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I just want to thank everyone for coming and thank Sean for hosting this and the Pollard. And yes, the book is a collection of tales. It was never originally meant to be put together in a book chronologically. So if you've read the book, you might have noticed that. But in any case, it does cover my early life and it kind of came about. I had been writing the stories for a while. Most of them were prompted by cleaning the closet or cleaning the basement and finding treasures. When you get old, you find treasures, old black and white photos and uh, journals that I wrote back in the day. And so they all prompted memories, which prompted the attempts to write about things and shared them with my friends. Some of them have been published in different running publications and also some Lowell people, Paul Marion of Loom Press and Richard Howe, who has the City of Lowell, the blog,
Mhm.
were supportive. And because it is really, in the heart of it is a Lowell book, and a lot of my formation as a person and a runner, and just figuring out as a young person my life. That's really the book in a nutshell, and I'm pretty pleased with it, and this did what I was hoping, and so this is the first time I've done an author talk, um, and it's we had a lot of things planned for the book. It was published in March just as things were going a little crazy.
Mm.
And so we didn't get to do, it was published just before the Boston Marathon, which would have been good timing to
Yeah.
have a few events. And we were looking forward to getting together with friends and doing this. I want to thank Tom Murphy. I don't know if he'll make it on the call tonight, but he is the publisher. His foundation, Barb's Beer, was publisher, and Tom was really the catalyst for me to put this together into a book. And Tom uh, has written a couple of books himself, so he used his foundation to help to get the book published. And otherwise, I wouldn't be here today talking about the book.
That's awesome. You talk about memories being triggered. I have to say one of the most beautiful stories I remember too is the one you wrote about your brother and talking about the spirit in the sky. And it was crazy how just riding in a bike down the street, hearing that song kind of brought all that back. And
Yeah, yeah, it's not a song you hear much nowadays,
yeah,
um, and it kind of caught me off guard because it was actually a classic car playing a classic song
mm-hmm.
with the top down, and
Yeah, took you
uh,
right back.
it just hit me like a wave. So, but what I wrote is, I couldn't even begin to put it into words, so I never even really tried. But anyway, just a few little memories of growing up in the Acre Lowell and my brother, because he was 8 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good distance. So, you really don't, he died when I was 13
Mm-hmm.
and he was died in Vietnam. So, um, So yeah, I wasn't a super aware kid when I was 12 or 13,
Mm,
not at all. So, um, it was a part of my growing up.
yeah. You took some really good notes in the 70s, though, I'll say. You really transported, at least me, well, back before my time, I'll be honest, but, back to a day of running like the Johnny Kelly style of kind of, you
Yeah.
know, all out. And I don't know. It was just, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Like the
Oh yeah,
difference there?
sure.
And do you still run or?
I still run. Well, it feels like running. It's very slow, and yeah, you have to do a little pickup once in a while to remind myself that I'm running. But
Yeah.
if when I don't do it, I miss it. So I do get out every day, and I don't feel fortunate to still be running age 65, especially
Wow.
with so many miles behind me on the body and everything. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for that. And as far as like the process of writing, um, it's just it's really an experiment. So I didn't really have any role models. I just kind of when I'm in conversation, it seems like I'm at 33 and a third, and everyone else is like 45, 78. So I have a hard time keeping up. But when I'm writing, it's just the opposite, and I write really fast, and I don't always, you know, it's more like a conversation for me where I'm trying to keep up, but I don't know why I write that way, but it's fun, and in terms of the memories, like how I can remember things 40 years ago, I probably can't, but when you start writing, things come back to you that you'd never have been thinking about. They just come back. I've had friends say that they would like to attempt to write about their life, but they don't remember anything. I said, just start writing, and it'll probably come back to you.
Yeah. Even whether or not it's true, no one's
Whether or
going
not
to.
it's true, I do have a quote at the beginning, sort of a qualifier to say, what you remember is not necessarily what happened. It's a quote from Proust, um, and
Right.
um,
Remembrance of things past is not
past.
necessarily the remembrance of things as they were.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
I knew I couldn't get it straight.
All right.
Yeah,
You write a lot about running in Lowell, and a little bit about Kerouac. And I was thinking about his passages in Maggie Cassidy, talking about running in the old in the indoor track at the annex, the high school annex.
right. It
Did you
was in
run in that annex?
the
Yeah.
Lowell Trade School annex.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. By the time we got to that track in the 70s, it was pretty dilapidated,
Mm.
and the floor had been warped. But it was only 110 yards, and it had very steep banks. So it wasn't the best thing to train on. But back in
Mm.
the day, in the 30s, they had big track meets there, and Kerouac was a sprinter. His game was football, of course.
Stocky a little bit.
But
Yeah.
my coach in high school, John Lang, was teammates with Kerouac, and at some point when we were in high school, he invited some of us to his house, and he took out his scrapbook and he showed us all the photos. Um, and when John passed away at his wake, they had his scrapbooks, and him and Jack used to walk to school together. So I had that connection, and he even has a cameo in in Maggie Cassidy. Uh, yeah, so
Hmm.
the connections are all there, all the Lowell roots.
Yeah. So you grew up in the Acre, and then moved to mighty Centerville, which,
Got
by the
all
way,
uppity and moved to Centerville.
I'm broadcasting live tonight from Centerville, by the way,
Oh, okay.
on the
I'm
record.
coming to you from the Berlin Library,
Okay. Yeah. Berlin, Massachusetts.
Berlin, Massachusetts.
Fancy.
Don't say Berlin.
Berlin?
It,
What did I
it,
say?
it- don't say Berlin like you would Berlin, Germany. I
Okay.
can't even say Berlin anymore because the locals have habituated me to say Berlin.
Berlin.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Is it a family name or
It's
something?
a no, no. It was named for Berlin, Germany, but it's a very small town of 3,000 people,
Okay.
and yeah, they like it to be pronounced that way.
I was also impressed and taken by, some of the earlier parts in the book talking about the adventures up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
Right.
You
Yeah.
want to talk about those at
Adventures
all?
and misadventures. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
The tent for everybody.
The
Trying to
tent for
haul.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Knuckleheads camping. Yeah,
Um,
that always stuck with me, but I think it was a time period. I was a senior in high school, and there were some of my best friends. Uh, some of them hadn't been away from Lowell much, let alone hiking through some pretty good hikes in the White Mountains. But it was kind of the last, you know, graduating from high school and maybe not being close friends anymore, or
hmm.
what have you.
If any of the attendees have questions and want to put them in the chat, I'm happy to read them out as we continue to talk. It looks like Rachel O'Brien has commented that she's photographed runners at the Boston Marathon for 4 years in a row, and worked at the Marathon Expo the year prior to coronavirus. So sounds like she's missing the marathon as well. And
Yeah.
they announced that they're not going to run it in next April, correct?
Yes, that's
I
right.
think, yeah.
Yeah, they've postponed it indefinitely. Um, my personal feeling is that they could have it. They would have to have it much reduced, and that's
Mm.
not something. There's too many conflicting parties. The marathon has become such an enterprise. I would love to, I mean, a lot of the marathons, so-called major marathons, there is a circuit there. Uh, some were canceled. London had their marathon. Tokyo had theirs, and they did it in a much reduced version. So I think Boston, after having the longest history, it would have been nice if they could have done it in a small version. But I understand why they didn't. I just personally feel that it would have been nice if they did.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know that when you started running the Boston Marathon, it was a different type of race. You talked about, I think the last
Yeah,
time it was an amateur race, or the first
yeah.
time they
I
started
stepped.
paying people was the last time you ran it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot of my running career, but
Uh-huh.
just I stepped into it at a time when it was really turning in from a race of hundreds of people to thousands, and
Hmm.
it seemed like it happened overnight. This running boom, the first one, and I first ran Boston in '77. Another somewhat of a misadventure, but uh, this was small then, and in '79 there were about 8,000 runners, and that's when the qualifying standards were beginning to come into play. And if you didn't break 3 hours and you were under 40 male, you didn't get to run. And then they made it even more stringent down to 2 hours and 50 minutes.
Hmm.
But I mean, technology is what really changed all of that, because back in the day, it was very difficult, especially with the crew they had. These were old time marathoners. Three guys that put on the whole race, and all of a sudden they're dealing with 8,000 people, and so they got a little cranky sometimes. People like Jock Semple, who was really unfairly maligned, I think, over the whole Catherine Switzer thing. But in any case, it became very big very fast. They instituted all the qualifying, but what allows it to happen today with I don't know how many people now, it's over 25,000. Um, they have the chip. They can have, really what they're having is about 10 or 15 different races, as opposed to '79 when we all left the starting gate at once. one of the stories in my book about that race where I finished third is I got number 1066. And normally you're kind of seated by the number. So I hadn't run that fast a time. I mean, I ran 2:28. That was, you go to the back. You don't start with the elite runners. Uh, um, but well, I won't tell you the whole story. But anyway, uh, I had 1066, and Jock Semple, the race director, came up to me, and he only looked at the race numbers. He tried to pull me back. And you don't want to spot the top runners in the world, even 50 yards or 100 yards. You want to be right there, and you want to start with them. And so that was important to me. And the night before, when I had that 1066 number, I worried that I might not be able to start with them. And so
But
that
it,
was a concern. But now with the chip, it's not so much.
but it turned out, just like 1066, William the Conqueror crowned first Norman king of
Battle
England.
of Hastings.
You
Yeah.
came back. You came. Rose above the high
Right.
number. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
the hometown rag, the little Sun, did a big story, and they had my picture on the front page of the newspaper, and they commented that I ran such a magnificent race, especially because I was wearing 1066 and I had to start behind all the elite runners, which
Right.
wasn't
Right.
really true. I knew all the elite runners because I'd been racing them, just not at the marathon distance. So they defended me and made sure that I was able to start with them.
That's awesome. Joe Martino asks, "What is your favorite chapter? Do you have a favorite story from this book?"
Oh, that's a tough one, Joe. That you're an author yourself, so those are like your babies. I don't know. I always particularly like the soundtrack one. It's just a special time. I was not even running much then. I was working. I had dropped out of college. I was working at Raytheon. I went to work with my dad every morning, and it was a kind of a time when I wasn't sure what to do with my life, and I'm still not sure about that. But anyway, uh, that's kind of a favorite, but uh, I kind of like them all to some extent. They could have been better. When it's all said and done, you always read it and go, oh, you cringe a little bit. But I enjoyed writing them. Writing them was the whole fun thing. Trying to get it, in a workable kind of published form was not fun.
Hmm.
I didn't, and because I have no experience or expertise at that. I just like the writing part. That's it. So I don't have the discipline. I guess I'm lazy.
All right. Stephen Conant asks, well, he says, "Hi, Bob." And he says, "I was interested to,"
Former high school teammate.
oh, there you go. "I was interested to learn when I read the book that you never had any interest in the trophies/awards you received. What is behind that, do you think?"
I don't know, Stephen. I uh, I think once you obtain something, it just doesn't seem that important anymore. I do have some trophies at home. Of course, they're not really well looked after. They have cobwebs on them, dust, but I do keep a few. It's just say something from the NCAA Division III meet. I don't know. It just it just doesn't. And I I don't know. They're more important for some people than others. I couldn't really see myself as someone with a trophy room necessarily, but maybe a little study with a couple of nice awards. Uh, the races I ran overseas in Japan and elsewhere, especially in Japan, they gave you a really nice award. It wasn't the kind of trophy that you put down and you look at a few months later and it's all tarnished because it, it's just a cheap gold plated whatever. Um, So we even got trophies back in the day with the race was sponsored by a beer company. It'd have a beer can on it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, for some people that's classy, but I don't think that would be acceptable unless I have, a man cave, which I don't.
You're not in a man cave right now? It looks kind of,
Oh, is it dark in here?
well, I don't know. There's like a study. You could have put a couple trophies up on there, up on those shelves behind you. I
Oh,
mean,
I should have brought some trophies. Sorry.
that's all right. Um, Rachel asks again, how long did it take you to finish the Boston Marathon, and what was your time? So
Uh,
did you run it 3 times, 4 times, something like that?
I ran it 6 times.
Six times.
I finished 3 times.
Okay. Yeah.
I ran my personal best at Boston was 2:12, 2 hours, 12 minutes and 30 seconds, which was good for third place behind Bill Rogers, who set an American record, 2:09:27, and Toshiko Seiko of Japan, who ran 2:10:30. So he was 2 minutes ahead of me. And that was the 79 Boston. A friend of mine was in the commentary booth with the commentator who was announcing at the finish line, Tom Grill. And when I came around the corner, he mistakenly, or maybe not, said, "Holy shit, it's Hodgie." And he announced that to the crowd. But that was my best at Boston. I also finished sixth place in Boston in 1986, and I ran a 2:14.
You talk in here about a love of running and a love of reading, and especially about athletic memoirs. Are there particular ones that you remember being really, really good, or that you might recommend?
Yeah, I mean, way too many to mention, but uh, first things I read in high school, my high school coach had a subscription to something called Track and Field News, and they would have a list of books. And I started to read, of course, I read the Jim Ryan story, was one of the first. And I read about Abibe Bikila, a two-time Olympic champion from Ethiopia, who won the Rome Olympic Marathon running barefoot.
Hmm.
So I was inspired by them, but a little later, the guys from New Zealand in Coach Arthur Lydiard, who were so successful at the Rome and Tokyo Olympics, and virtually hundreds of athletes that Arthur Lydiard influenced and coached in other countries as well. So all of their autobiographies, biographies, memoirs. I would read and reread them. Ron Hill from England, um, and Bill Rogers, who was in my own running club. Uh, he was, a great example. Just someone who we were very friendly with and ran with all the time. And the next thing you know, he's running third in the World Cross Country Championships and winning Boston in an American record time. It just seems, impossible that this was the same guy that I was running neck and neck with in a race just a few years ago. So, uh, but there are many. There's some good, pretty decent fiction writing on running as well. Once a Runner, John Parker's book. So yeah, I have a pretty good collection. I'm not really a book collector, but I did manage to have a ton of running books, and I'm still collecting them all the time, or buying them and reading them and passing them on. Yeah.
Excellent. A K Sargent, which I think maybe is a first initial and then Sergeant. Maybe it's I don't know. Anyway, he or she. Oh, maybe he. There's still writing. Anyway, in the chat window, K Sargent said, "I'm not a Lowell native, but my wife is, and through she and her father, longtime runner, heard all about you. I've started your book, love it so far, but am willing to have you spoil it for me. Did you ever do Western States Ultra? And if so, what
Yeah.
possessed you to do such a thing? You're welcome to say yes. Read it in the book." And then
Yeah. Nope, you won't find that in the book.
No, no Western States Ultra, right?
No, I
You did
never
some
ran
world
ultras.
traveling.
I never really had much interest in ultras. I think the marathon was the ultimate for me in terms of, I think ultra marathons a different mindset. So it's not something I was anxious to try or ever tried. I did run some 30-mile plus runs in training. Um, and I think I could have been decent running ultra marathon, at least up to 50 miles. I just never had, yeah. I was more interested, honestly, in being a middle distance runner, like a miler or, you know, a good 5K runner like Steve Prefontaine. I didn't want to, I like the track. I just never had as many opportunities to run and track. And it's just a lot more difficult. Road racing was taking off when I started, and the Boston Marathon was kind of everything. If you told someone you were a distance runner, and the first thing they would say is, "Have you run Boston?" Because that's what people were aware of the most
Hmm.
in our area.
Have you heard of the Barkley marathons?
Um, I have, yes,
There's a
yeah,
documentary. It's well worth watching.
yeah. I have not seen that. No,
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway,
it is a
uh,
bit. I would be interested in seeing that though.
it's the nonstop, like in the mountains of Tennessee, day
Yes,
and night, and it's something like three
yeah,
full marathons, and yeah, I don't know.
yeah,
Limits
yeah.
of human endurance. Yeah,
When all these different events have come along, my interest is kind of muted. I'm interested, but yeah, not it's not overly interesting to me as far as I mean, I'm interested more in the personal stories of some of the people,
right.
Yeah.
So Sargent also says, full disclosure, there were some T-shirts discovered recently tucked away, and the only person anyone could think of uh, to have done that race was you. So I don't know if you know any sergeants in Lowell,
No,
but
no
they
Western
might have your
states, but
T-shirt.
I have a lot of respect for the people that can do Western states. It seems like a heck of an event,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's not me. No.
Rachel asks, have you ever ran 50 Ks?
No, no. I've kind of approached running that distance in training, but never had any interest to be a competitor in ultras.
And all the majors, the 6 majors, how many of those have you bagged?
Well, I've run New York, I've run Boston, Chicago. Back in my time, Fukuoka in Japan was one of the majors, but there was no marathon majors as a formal thing.
Hmm.
So these races that are on different continents and all this kind of thing, uh, that didn't even exist in my day, and maybe at the tail end. But it wasn't something I wasn't interested so much in the quantity. I wanted to run a fast one. Unfortunately, I ran 30 plus marathons and only ran a handful of fast ones. But that is the marathon. That's more or less my story right there.
Hmm. Joe Martino asks, he's so impressed about your wins at Mount Washington. Could you
Yeah.
speak to that grueling race?
Yeah. I started running Mount Washington. The first time I ran it, I was 18 years old, 1974, and I was a hiker. As you learned from my hike story when I was in high school, and I love the White Mountains. So when I heard there was a race up Mount Washington, I just had to do it. Seemed like a good challenge, and um, so I just ran it every year. It used to fall in June, right at the end of our track season in college. And so it was a good, in summer, we would run a lot of miles and, get ready for cross country in the fall. So Mount Washington was a good way to kick it off. And it was just a great time. Sometimes we'd spend a whole week up there. We'd go up a few days before we run the race. And then we would just stay up there and really um, train hard for a week. But the race itself, it was just an odd thing because we were accustomed to flat races, and we didn't really train for it. We used the race as training to get us in shape for our other races. And but it was nice to win it, that's for sure. It took me a couple of tries, and you never knew what you were going to be running into. A lot of funny stories about different Mount Washington road races over the years. But with the first year I ran it, there was less than 200 people, and now they have to close it off. I think they allow about 1,200 people, and even that's kind of pushing it on the road there.
So it's up the auto road,
It's up the auto road, yeah.
and
Yeah.
did you
It's
you ran the whole way?
yes, I did.
My goodness.
Not well. The last time I ran it, I might have walked a little, but I was 60 years old by then. So, but yeah, back in the day, the average pace would be around 8 minutes a mile, which is, the average pace in a normal race would be under 5 minutes a mile. So, yeah, I just used to go out really hard, discourage anyone from staying with me, and then and then just hope I could hang on. And you got a different cross section of athletes there. The first time I ran it, there were a bunch of old timers who came from all over New York, Maine, and everything. And I was 18 years old, and these guys were just lively and a bunch of jokers out for a little adventure on the weekend. And Jock Semple of Boston Marathon director fame was the one who actually brought this race back. The Mount Washington race started in the 30s, and then they didn't hold it. They held it for about 15 years, and then they didn't hold it during the war years. And he brought it back in 1960, and he brought John J. Kelly up there. And John J. Kelly is the only person who won Boston and Mount Washington. But it was such a good adventure the first time. I went up with two of my high school Lowell friends, and we just had a blast. The old guys had beer, and we went up the night before, and a friend of ours dropped us off, drove all the way home back to Lowell, drove all the way back to Mount Washington the next day after that to pick us up. And yeah, just those are all great memories and good times. But as far as the Mount Washington race itself, I did write a story about it. It's not included in the book, but it is about my first Mount Washington road race. The story was in New England Runner about 5 years ago.
Puts in perspective my complaining about running on Christian Hill. I really
Yeah,
don't have much to
yeah.
complain about.
When we were in high school, we did a lot of running on Christian Hill. After we lost our track at the Lowell Trade School to neglect and disrepair, we just started running on the roads because we didn't have any other options. So some of the runners would train inside the high school hallways, and Coach Lang would take us over to First Street, and we had various lengths of hill. And he would just hop in the car. He'd start his little stopwatch with the second hand, and we'd take off, and he'd shout some encouragement, and we actually all improved doing this type of training. So, the indoor track was not really suiting our purposes at all for distance runners, especially.
Yeah. Yeah, I live on Christian Hill, and I'm not much of a runner, but I do like dabble in it a little bit. I start slow and then I taper off is the kind of thing that I do.
Yeah.
And I like, starting on top of the hill and
Oh,
going
yeah.
down, but then I know I gotta come back up at some point.
Yeah, when I lived in Centerville, I did a lot of runs up and over. I'd go out and run through Drake
Yeah.
out Route 113 area, and then I would circle around and come back up through Christian Hill.
Yeah.
And down, yeah.
It's scary out. There's not much of a shoulder now. You kind of like always
Oh,
having
yeah.
to look out.
Yeah, I would only be really on that road for a short time.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the names of some of the other roads. It's been
That's
a
all right.
lot of years, but yeah.
Methuen Street, probably. K. Sargent writes, yeah, so this is a good question. Are you writing something now? If not, are you planning, would like to write something more? So are you continuing to write?
Yes, I've been writing. I don't know about another book anytime soon, but I'm still trying to get over this one. And yeah, I actually just spoke with um, an editor from a magazine in the UK called Like the Wind. I would highly recommend it if you're interested in running, and it's covers all running events in all any aspects of running. But it's just a high quality publication. You don't see much anymore. It has great illustrations and photographs, and I was really honored to have them publish one of my stories. Of course, it doesn't pay anything. But that's okay.
Yeah,
But anyway, it's called Like the Wind, and you can find their website if and take a look, and you can even just get a sample issue. If you want to get the November issue, you'll be able to read my story.
nice.
But I do keep writing all the time. I don't know, once you start, I know that Sean has been a writer. We're actually published together in a compilation that Paul Marion helped put together with Cork, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
I think once the pandemic blows over, they're planning big parties for that
yeah,
publication, because that's part of the trying to get Lowell the learning city designation from UNESCO. So
yeah, yeah. Do you want
I'm
to tell people a little bit more about that? You may be more informed.
sure. It's been
What?
something that has been in the works for a little while. I'll just talk briefly. There are a couple questions on the thing, which I'll get back to you. I'll let you take a sip though. Um, but so Lowell has a sister city, Cork, Ireland. And Cork, Ireland, it's sort of an informal sister city, but Cork, Ireland got a UNESCO designation as a learning city, which basically it just I don't know. It shows the international community that it's a city dedicated to learning and has that built into its core. And there's a UMass Lowell professor, John Wooding, I think just recently retired, but he wanted to see if Lowell could get the same designation, and if it did, it would be the first American city with that designation. So that no other U.S. city has been designated a UNESCO Learning City. So in support of that effort, there's been a Learning City Festival planned, which I think all got scuttled because of COVID. And I think they're still in talks about picking it back up. And then um, Atlantic Currents is the name of the anthology, and I believe it came out in May or June of
I
this
think
year.
I think they were having a release party even in April.
Right.
Um, I was supposed to have a release thing for my book at Mark's Running in Lowell, and
Hmm.
it was scheduled for the same day that Paul would schedule the Atlantic Currents pre-release or release party at the hotel there
Hmm.
in downtown Lowell. So
The Inn and Conference Center, right? Yeah.
yeah, so I was
Yeah.
supposed to do two things, and in the one day, and of course nothing was able to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But Atlantic
but,
Currents is 30 writers from Lowell and 30 writers from Cork, and it's an
mm,
anthology. And it runs the gamut of nonfiction. I have a poem in there, and there's poetry and others. There's short stories and things like that. So
mm.
it's interesting. Where can people get your book before we get too far away from that? Where can people get Tales of the Time?
There's a handful of bookstores in New England that have it. They can get it on Amazon. The closest places you can buy it retail would be at Mark's Running. His store in Acton is active right now. I think his Lowell store. I'm not sure if it's open right now. So Mark's Running. There's a place in Acton called the Silver Unicorn. It's a little independent bookstore. They have it. If you're down on Cape Cod, the Eight Cousins bookstore has it. So if you send me your address, we'll be happy to mail you one. I have a few copies.
Maybe even
I,
sign it, right?
I could
That's the
sign it.
It's the
Yes.
cool
So if
thing
you
about
get in,
author events. Yeah.
if you'd like to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to mail one to you.
Okay.
So, but it's, a lot of the things that we had planned fell through.
Yeah.
So I think now we have about 8 places, retail, and everything else is either through myself or Amazon.
If you don't have Bob's email and just want to send a message to me, you should have got an email from me about tonight's Zoom. I can forward that on to Bob. No problem. E. Korovos asks, did you play AYO baseball? Can't
I did.
remember.
I did. In fact, when I was researching some of my book, I did some searches in the archive of the Lowell Sun, and I found a headline that said that I pitched a shutout and for the Tigers. Oh no,
Okay.
yes, was it Tigers? Orioles. I pitched a shutout for the Orioles when I was in the Pony League. They called it the Pony League and the Little League. In the Little League, I played for the Reds. So I was a pitcher. And back in, at that time, you played any position, whatever the coach said. But I did pitch. I pitched sidearm, and it was terrifying for the batter. But in any case, yeah, baseball was my first love, and then I dropped it like a rock when I started running, and that was the end of baseball.
Interesting.
I wasn't that good or anything, but my older brothers were, and it was just part of growing up playing baseball.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I totally relate to that. That I love playing, but I was not really that good.
Yeah.
My MO is to hit 2 towering foul balls and then strike out. Just like big.
Yeah.
Um, and Steve Coleman asked, what was your most memorable race?
Oh, I think the Beppu Marathon in Japan. I had a narrow victory, and I didn't run a very fast time, but it was we ran very fast for the first half of the race. We had a tailwind, and it, of course, was out and back, and so we had to run into that same wind coming home. Um, but just winning a race there, because they really have a real love of marathoning, and most of the major marathons in Japan, they used to invite just a handful of foreign runners to come and run. So I just felt very honored to be invited, number one, but to win a race there is pretty amazing feeling. And it's hard to explain. We have Boston, and Boston's a great marathon, but the level of respect for the athletes in Japan, marathoning is one of the major sports. Here in the USA is different. So it's very amazing to get off an airplane in Japan, have all these people taking your photo like you're really somebody, and asking you all these questions. And yeah, it was good times. And so I think that if I had to pick one, that would be it, because it was one of my few victories. I had some victories, but in a major race, an international race, um, that was a big one for me.
Steven says he watched the video of it on YouTube. I don't know if that means the
You can
marathon
watch it
or
on YouTube.
your
I
win.
also raced in Fukuoka the same year in 1982, and I finished fifth. That's also on YouTube. So you can really get a feel, I think, if you watch it, from how they revere marathoning. You can see the spectators. You can see the way that they televise it with respect. Here, when they televise a marathon, it's not covered. It's almost like they don't like our sport, the way they cover it. But in
Mm.
any case, they're
Hmm.
covering like 10 different things at once. And in Japan, this is very focused, and they put a lot of effort into it. And that's what you have to do. You can't cover anything without, you know, really putting that effort in.
Hmm.
So it's just a different world, different world.
Stephen asked, did they cheer for you when you took the lead for your win?
I think so. But I was neck and neck with a Japanese runner. So
Oh, okay. Maybe
one
not.
of my
Maybe
issues
it
in the
sounds.
race was I did take the lead and I broke away, and I was surrounded by press buses and people waving little flags. And I just fell into kind of a trance. And I thought I had it made. I was cruising, but unfortunately, I still had a ways to go. I was about 20 miles close to it when the Japanese runner passed me and shocked me back into, reality. So we were neck and neck, and I caught. He got about 100-yard lead on me, and I thought I was going to finish second, and then I caught him at 40 kilometers with 2 kilometers to go, and I beat him by 7 seconds. So it was very close, and yeah, yeah, it was good to pull it out.
Excellent. Rachel asks, "What's your favorite Jack Kerouac memory?" And I don't think you met Jack, but maybe from his
No, I
books.
never met Jack. I've read when I was in high school. Uh, I was on a hiking trip, a camping trip actually, and I was only a sophomore, and my brother drove me and a friend up to the White Mountains, a place where he used to go camping, and he just dropped us there for a week. So my friend wasn't particularly enamored about hiking that much. The first time we hiked halfway up North Twin Mountain, and he said, "That's it. I mean, I'm tired." So I carried on. And there was these two older guys that were camping there next to us. And anyway, we told them we were from Lowell. And the first thing they said was, "Oh, you read Jack Kerouac?" And I said, "No, I never heard of Jack Kerouac." Uh, um, so then they, told us all about Jack, and I couldn't wait to read, because I actually ended up hiking with these guys myself a couple of times, and they just amazed me. They were so strong, and they would get to the top of the mountain and take out a package of cigarettes and start smoking. I was just amazed. Uh, and anyway, that's how I first learned about Kerouac, and he had a influence on me, I will say, in my life. At the time, in the 70s, most of his books were not even in print, and he was not a favorite son of Lowell like he is today. So it was great that they rediscovered his books. And particularly, I do like the Lowell ones, so different. And, the style, like a Town in the City. And I noticed that the Pollard did a read of Town in the City, right?
Well, we past couple of years we've done a marathon reading of On the Road, and
On the
this
road,
year we
okay.
were going to do The Town and the City.
Mm,
On the Road took about 12 hours. Town and the City was going to take about 18, but
yeah,
we had scheduled it for March 28th, and the pandemic had set in by then, so we had to scuttle it. But we're hoping 2021 we can pick that up again, and maybe you'll be one of our readers. Everyone
sure.
that's on this call is invited to read in our
As
marathon.
long as it's
Oh,
before my bedtime.
yeah. Well, so
Yeah,
the cool thing about the town and the city, not to change, go too far astray, but
yeah.
there's we're going to break it up over 2 days. One day being the town, and the next day being the city. So it
Oh, there you go.
kind of lends itself to that. And
Yeah,
so
it's
I
been a
think,
long time since I've read that. So
yeah,
it will be
you
fun to
and
read it again.
everybody on Earth. I don't think many people have read Town and the City because it's not it's very different from his later books.
It is.
And
It's
and
Thomas Wolfe inspired.
exactly. And a lot of
Yeah,
Kerouac aficionados kind of poo-poo the book, but I would say, having recently read it, that all of the stuff that comes later is already in Town and the City, and
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
it's a really it's a little overwritten, but it's a really good book.
yeah.
Um, so the first day would be like 12 hours from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And the second day, which is shorter, the books, the second, the last two books take place in New York City, and that would be about 6 hours. So just during the day, during daylight hours.
Mm.
But yeah,
Recently, some of my patrons here in Berlin, the book group was wanted to read On the Road,
Mm,
And a few of these folks have read my book, and I don't know if it was influenced by the fact that there's a little Kerouac and quotes in there. But
mhm.
anyway, one of one of the patrons called me one day and he said, "Bob, what's it about?" And I mean, I knew this person. He's typically they read popular fiction, and
Yeah,
I said this is probably not going to be their cup of tea at all.
it's
So
not
he,
a
he
plot.
wanted me to explain what it's about, and I go, it's really just a buddy book. It's really not about anything.
Yeah,
But anyway, I thought that was fun. It's nice that they took that challenge. But anyway,
that's great. So I hope you will read, and I'll definitely send you an invitation.
okay.
And people should look out for that. We are a part of this fall. I did recruit some folks to read selections from one of the chapters in Town in the City, which is like a Christmas theme. So I'll be cutting together a video of local, mostly Llewellians, reading one after another
Hmm.
that chapter. So that'll be the little mini
I did
Christmas
come up
carol.
there for the festival a couple of times.
Yeah, and
Just
we're
a few events.
2022 is the centennial as well, I would
All
say.
right.
So
And I
we're
came
already
up for the
planning.
exhibition of the scroll
Oh
at the
yeah,
Boot Mills.
2007.
Yeah, that was pretty nice.
Yeah, I think there's
I
talks
was
of.
actually up there interviewing for the Drake Public Library director position,
Oh, no kidding.
and I stopped at the boot mill on the way through because I knew it was there.
Why not?
Yeah.
How long have you been in Berlin? Or I said it wrong.
This is my
Berlin.
eight. I'm just about halfway through my 8th year.
Okay.
So before that, of course, the law librarian in Boston. So I don't miss the commuting.
I bet not.
No, not sure how I did that. It was 4:30 in the morning every day.
That's early. All right. So it's about 7:55. I don't see any other questions in the chat window, so I'm thinking I'm gonna at least stop the recording. First, I'll say thank you very much, Bob, for being here, for writing such an excellent book, and for uh, for um, for putting it out in the world, and for dealing with the awkwardness of this, COVID author of Zoom talk. I think it went pretty well, and it was really great to have you. So
All right.
just want to
Thank
say
you.
thanks. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for being here.
All right. So I'm going to stop the recording. All right. So if I'm not going to stop anyone from coming off mute if you want to. A lot of people are saying